Life is a movie. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to today's report. Today's report was sent in by Evan Jackson. When this happened, an evening in early November 2019, the drugs used were dextromethorphan and cannabis at a dose of 750 milligrams. The route of administration was orally through gel caps. Gender, male. Weight, 225 pounds. Age, 22. Height, 6 feet. Prior experience includes cannabis, alcohol, LSD twice, and DXM 3 times. The first time being 300 milligrams, the second and third time at 600 milligrams, and the setting was at a friend's house. So here we have another DXM trip. I feel in this one the stages were described very well, and it has good description of dissociation you might feel at this dose. And also it does highlight the synergy cannabis can have on the experience. So I think you guys will find this one interesting, and without further ado, let's dive right into it. It was a Friday in early November. After picking up my check from work and cashing it in at the bank, I took a trip to the CVS on my way back home. I didn't feel a need to buy the name brand Robitussin over the bargain brand. They both contain the same ingredients, so why bother? Neither did I want to buy the syrup. I never tried the syrup, but I've heard one too many instances of vomiting from it, so instead, I purchased one bottle of 20 gel caps, 300 milligrams. It was the only product that was secured in a clear, theft-proof plastic box, unlike the rest. Walgreens didn't keep their Dex imprisoned behind a plastic box, however. I bought one bottle of bargain brand Tussin from there too, so as not to arouse suspicion buying multiple bottles at either store. Conveniently, the Walgreens was immediately across the street from CVS. Competitors think alike, I suppose. I did DXM 3 times before that day, the first time being 300 milligrams at his house, the second time 600 at mine, and the third time being 600 again at my house, except I was alone. I understood the effects of DXM quite well, with the drunken sensation invoked during the come-up, then a bout of vomiting, followed by the good parts of the trip. This time, though, I wanted to push more pills down. The second time I tripped, the one at my house with my friend Mason, name changed for privacy, he had leftover DXM. I figured I would add that onto what I looted from the pharmacies. Thus, I was going to drop 750 milligrams the next day, Saturday. I texted Mason to inform him I raided the store for DXM, and I asked him if he wanted to join me. This would be the second time he would do it. He said maybe. Nonetheless, we arranged to meet the following afternoon. It was a partly cloudy and cool Saturday afternoon when Mason and I went hiking. We smoked some weed and discussed the details of what would happen that evening. He changed his mind about doing the DXM since he had some wine he intended on having with his weed instead. Shortly after grabbing some takeout and settling into his house at 6, I got to swallowing the 50 pills, 3 at a time, with my food. I expected it to be more difficult getting the pills down, but since I had food with me, it was easier. Mason's dad was concerned that I would vomit. I thought I wouldn't. Since the last time I did DXM, I was able to resist vomiting by meditating. I figured I would do the same this time. I told him about that, and he wished me luck, disappearing into his bedroom to leave Mason and I alone with the PlayStation 2. The effects of the pills began to set in about a half hour after I took them. It was just as I expected, the drunken sensation. It was as if I had slammed 4 or so drinks into my system. While the game was paused, Mason went to chat with his mom a couple rooms away in her bedroom. After going to interrupt them for a bucket, just in case I was going to vomit, I continued to remain as still as a statue on the living room couch. I'd meditate like last time. Deep breaths. Clear your mind. An acidic heat wave stewed deep in my stomach. I only had to keep my head straight and not panic to avoid the nausea, but despite my attempts to contain myself, I couldn't climb over the hurdle. I took the bucket and vomited profusely into it, hacking out a musty, pinkish liquid of half-digested food and tussin pills. I must have vomited 3 times before, dry heaving an additional 2 times. I drank the ice water nearby. Mason returned to the couch and resumed the game. The music Mason and I had playing began to annoy me as I threw up. so I asked him to pause it, and I promptly resumed my silence. I needed to collect myself. It wasn't long before I was talking fine. Mason said something like, "I see you're doing a lot better now," to which I agreed. It was about 7 when the vomiting stage ended. I knew smooth sailing was coming after this. The peak came on to me. I laid out on the couch when I said, "This feels weird," to Mason as he drank glass after glass of wine. I began slurring to Mason about a psychedelic and wobbly, weird type of song, Last House in the Enchanted Forest by Black Moth Super Rainbow, as I began playing it. I felt as if my peripheral vision widened or that my sight bulged outward as a fisheye lens with a black ring around it. The next thing I remember, I was looking at the room from a different perspective. It was as if my sight was zoomed out with black letterboxes surrounding the room as I looked inward to it. I began to slur heavily or talk robotically, with my words coming out long and drawn out. I felt like a robot too, some large and grandiose mind contained in a fragile, disposable body. I don't recall the order of the events following this. I only remember the bits and pieces, but I know I was stuck in a multi-layered other world. My life became a movie, and I was but a moviegoer watching it. I suggested to Mason that we get up. It would be funny and interesting to stand after the both of us were filled with drugs. He rose first, then stumbling to catch his bedroom doorway so he wouldn't fall. I rose next from my couch grave, standing into an odd position. I stood like I took a shit without toilet paper and had my pants around my ankles, ready to waddle around. I did the classic ambivalent robo-walk into the kitchen with Mason to get water. I went to the bathroom. He returned to the living room. Time was moving extremely slow. By the time it was 8, I thought it was 10. This caught me by great surprise when Mason told me the time. I started to climb down from the peak. Mason and I talked having some weed. He told me when he had weed after DXM, it helped him feel better. I took his word for it, and we both smoked a bowl. The weed began to move through the layers of the other world. After each daydream I entered, I returned back feeling like I peeled back another layer. In one of those daydreams, or a very trance-like state as it were, my bodily perception began to either muddy or disappear. I became larger than the universe. The black void of space surrounded a bubble containing galaxies, and I was a bodiless being peering into it. What was I? What is this? This is reality? A profound revelation washed through me when I exited the daydream. With great astonishment in my voice, I told Mason that I thought I had an ego death. For the rest of the night, I began to come down. Just an hour before, I was experiencing that sensation where everything is different, like it was the first time I had been in my friend's house, or that I was stuck in a dream, exiting and entering new ones. But after some more gaming, I crashed on my friend's couch. I slept at 11 p.m., then woke later at 1 a.m. and returned home. I was irritable and groggy from then on until I fell asleep again an hour later. The following morning, I thought again about the trip. I didn't regret it, and I liked it very much, having seen an entirely different perspective of things. It was fun. I couldn't do it again anytime soon, though. I don't see how anyone could use DXM very regularly since it removes your headspace so far out from reality. Nonetheless, if someone would want to do it, I encourage them to fully understand DXM and conduct their research before beginning, and to consider setting, and all the ins and outs before having a good trip.